So we're back at the list of common retention graphs that we see and what we can learn from them and improvements we can make. On to number 2, the gradual realization. Do you want to talk us through this graph?
Yeah, the common thing that I've found in the videos that I reviewed, and again, I up until very recently reviewing 3 videos every single week in my newsletter, writing videos every single week for different clients across different niches, is that it comes down again to payoff. And so I've got the 3 things that we can usually boil it down to. So the first thing is potentially the audience realizes gradually that they've already experienced the grand payoff, the biggest kind of aha moment they're going to get in this whole video. Maybe it's come early on.
Okay.
So an example
that explains the sort of quicker drop at the start. So.
Not necessarily. So what tends to happen, and the reason I call this the gradual realization, is that nothing distinctly happens that makes you think, oh, I'm not enjoying this anymore, or oh, that was a bad joke, like let's skip away, or whatever it is. It's more a case that you're kind of instinctively waiting for that next payoff moment, that next little injection of, oh yes, cool, I've learned something, let's keep watching. This is particularly prevalent when videos are edited really well. They almost trick you into thinking they're being very engaging, but the substance underneath, you gradually start to realize, oh, when did I actually last learn something in this? And you won't necessarily say it like that, right? This is a split-second thing that happens in your head. But it's the case where at various points across the video, people start to think, perhaps this video has kind of done all it's going to do for me. I'm going to skip away. But it's not a distinct moment where the video just crashes and burns or does something really, really bad, which makes everyone leave. It's like a gradual realization. So one example I can think of for that first realization that the big payoff has already happened was I reviewed a video for, it was a review of a horror video game being done by a non-horror fan. And I think that was basically the title. It was like a non-horror fan reviews X horror game.
Gotcha.
And it was really, really cool. It was really well edited. They were super engaging. It was like all good signals. But they basically, after about a minute, were like, yeah, so even though I'm not a horror fan, this game didn't scare me too much. And then the video is just a review of the game, and a very good review of the game. But because of the expectations you set up at the start and the types of people who might be watching it to think, oh, I kind of like the look of this game, but I'm not really into horror. Should I bother buying it? They've got their answer. And then
the first minute.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, it's like you might think, well, I'll carry on watching just to see if there's anything else for me in here. But again, it's a gradual realization. I've had my big payoff. I'm good to go. So that's the first. Yeah.
So the gradual realization is throughout the video, the viewer is gradually realizing that there's not really going to be much more to this video. And they gradually decide to come off. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first potential reason for it. The second one is playing off of that really, and kind of to what you just said. Even if you don't realize, oh, maybe I've had the biggest payoff and therefore there's nothing much for me, it might just be the fact that generally you're not sure what the next payoff is. And this is something we spoke about right at the start, is just knowing what it is that I'm looking forward to in the next few minutes. And the third and final reason potentially is just a case of overwhelm, where depending, it could be on your presentational style, it could be based on the editing style, cut, something like that. It could be that you haven't broken up the information you're going to give into a particularly digestible format. So coming up with a framework for something you're explaining is often a good one, or at the very start, highlighting the number of tips or bits of information or whatever. It just gives people the confidence that, okay, this is all I'm going to have to digest. That's a manageable amount of information. So if the video becomes overwhelming for any number of reasons, that's often, again, the point where you're not seeing a specific bit of the video that's really bad and therefore people leave, but it is just a gradual sense of like, okay, no, I'm done. And once you lose the thread of a video, particularly if it's something educational, if you miss one thing and you spend a second having to compute what's just been said, they've already moved on to the next thing, you don't have a second to think about it, it's just easier to think, I'm gone again. So it's just putting yourself in the viewer's shoes at all times, basically.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I've seen videos before where they seem really clean and polished and the editing's great, but maybe I'm being thrown too much stuff at once, and I'm finding it hard to process everything that's happening every second. So it gets to a certain point, I'm just thinking, I'm a little bit lost here. And the easier decision is just to leave the video than to go back and rewatch it again and try and keep up. So that makes complete sense. That editing problems or pacing issues causing viewers to feel like that. Really interesting. And I want to just go back. You said about payoff hasn't been clarified. I'm just conscious, do you think there's scenarios where the YouTuber's established like the overall payoff for the video at the very start? Do you think there's ever a need to have like more micro payoffs, like numerous mini payoffs throughout the video before you get to the grand payoff?
Yeah, for sure. This is something that I've spoken about on Twitter in the past, and I am putting into this comprehensive script writing course, essentially. Yeah, very much so. Again, it depends what the video is. So something on the most recognizable level, Mr. Beast's most recent video, the grand payoff is what happens when you drive a train into a big pit. But the mini payoffs on the way are, well, what happens when you drive a van into a big pit? And what about a bus into a big pit? And all of that. So it's like, it's building up to the big thing at the end. But it's exactly the same for a piece of educational content, where it might be that you need to understand certain building blocks in order to understand whatever the ultimate point of the tutorial is. So another video I wrote was about how Thomas Frank, the Notion and productivity YouTuber, makes so much money with his Notion kind of side of his business. And the ultimate payoff there, like the grand payoff, is how does he do that? Like, why does he make so much money? But the first building block of understanding that is, well, he stopped posting on his main channel. And so already that's like an interesting thing. We tee that right at the start. It's like in order to achieve X, he had to do Y. But Y in itself is intrinsically interesting. Like, he's got a 3 million sub or 2 million, whatever it is, 2.5 million sub channel that's absolutely fine.
Main channel.
Yeah, main channel. Yes. Yeah. So why is it that he's abandoned that, first of all? And second of all, why is it that has created the scenario in which this much smaller channel is now making him more money? So again, that's the first payoff we build up to, is the abandonment of the main channel. And so in any situation, and this is where good storytelling comes in to either education or entertainment, it's giving people the necessary building blocks to understand the grand payoff that are themselves intrinsically interesting.
Makes complete sense. Yeah, so useful. I'm just trying to summarize this quickly then. So pacing, to avoid the gradual realization issue that we're seeing in this graph, YouTubers need to make sure their pacing is on point and isn't too overwhelming or fast. Clearly clarify their payoffs, and if they have to have multiple payoffs throughout the video to keep people interested for the entirety of the video, and also don't give away the payoff at the very start of the video and give people a reason.
There you go.
Fair enough.
That's it. That's
awesome.
pretty good.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to, is it the final one? The final retention graph that you typically see that gives clues as to why YouTubers are losing viewers. The late drop-off. What is a late drop-off, George?
Plain and simple, right at the end of the video, people start to disappear in droves in a way that they haven't been throughout the rest of the video. Along with, obviously, like a little dip at the start, a little dip at the end is always going to happen. But your main task is to stop people realizing the video is about to end. And again, this comes down to a bit of a choice about what you want from your YouTube channel and what your aim is at the end. I always say that the most effective call to action in a video is to try and make people watch another one, because that's going to get more watch time on your channel generally. It's going to boost the next video that they watch. It's all round good. It's going to get people familiarized with you and your content more, and start to see you as more of an authority in whatever space it is that you're creating content in. And so the idea that at the end of a video, you need to implore that they should like the video and subscribe and maybe comment and whatever else. Whatever it is you're trying to do at the end, just pick one thing. For me, that is trying to make people watch another video. And this is an example of a video where somebody basically, they kind of spend about a minute summarizing what's happened in the video, don't need to do it. We've just seen it.
Sure.
People don't care. People are too attention deficient. And then they give every call to action under the sun. It was a more extreme example, this one, because most people don't. It will usually just be, oh, if you like this video, you'll like this one as well, and don't forget to subscribe, which is fine. But ultimately, what we want to avoid is giving people decision fatigue. And if you can only make them do one thing, try and make them watch another video. And I have a little system for that if you wanted to talk about that.
So yeah, that makes sense. A common problem that YouTubers make that cause their viewers to leave is they just drag the end of the video out too long with too many call to actions or an unnecessary outro, and we see a graph like you've just talked us through here, George. Yeah, really interesting to hear that you've got a system that YouTubers can implement to stop viewers leaving their video at the end. Do you want to talk us through that system? Yeah.
So this is something that I started implementing, I guess 2 or 3 months ago, or whenever that tweet came out, actually. It essentially, it seems to have this kind of magical effect. And I said on Twitter more recently, this is the closest thing to a hack that I have discovered since doing all of this. And obviously there are no hacks, etc., etc. But it just, when you use this formula on your call to action at the end, the end screen click rate just outperforms the channel average nearly every time. I've had other people DMing me their end screen, screenshots like the ones you can see there, where it just seems to work. So I thought
amazing.
We can maybe talk through how I rewrote somebody's call to action to implement the technique.
Okay, yeah, here's your original tweet. Run us through it, George.
Yeah, okay. So when I was first kind of figuring this out, I broke down a call to action on somebody's video that they'd sent me and essentially rewrote it. So the first thing that I did here, and something that I do across script writing that is one of the most effective things that I have found for being able to see clearly what it is that your script is doing and what the purpose of certain parts of your script is to essentially label or highlight what certain sentences are for. So this is the call to action that we have at the moment. I won't read it out. If you want to read it, you can pause it. But what I did first of all was to label, as I say, what each of these 5 sentences are. So if we scroll on to the next tweet, you'll see how I labeled them, essentially. Okay. So we've got the link, first of all, and that is not the URL. That is the link back to what is in the current video, right? So I mentioned earlier that salting your food in advance can be extremely powerful. So that familiarizes the audience with the idea that we're talking about something that's just happened. Like I said earlier, what we want to do is not let people know that this video is about to end. So that's all good. Mentioning something that's happened in the video already kind of seems like, well, we're just continuing to talk about this topic.
Yeah, that doesn't necessarily suggest that the video is ending, does it? You're just referring back to something that came earlier.
Yeah, exactly. The next sentence, it sort of forms a promise. So, and in my deep dive video about brining, I explained exactly how that works and how you can apply it. So again, by itself, all good. Interesting enough. Then the call to action. So I'd recommend checking that video out right here. Then it kind of goes back and carries on talking. It's probably the one thing I've started doing that's had the biggest impact on my cook. Again, interesting. Like that's something that I would want to know if I want to improve my cooking. But it's kind of taken a step back. We've already been told to click, and now we're being told another reason why we should. And then it ends with some pleasantries, which are obviously very nice. And there's a balance to be struck when writing your YouTube video. You don't want to seem like a cold, dead robot person.
Yeah, you don't want to say, watch this, now go away, like leave.
Yeah, you don't, but also you do.
But you've got to find a pleasant way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the labels that I added to them.
That's really interesting. Can I just ask you why? Why did you step back after the call to action and have another sort of curiosity gap sentence there?
So I haven't. This is how the original video looked. And this is me, before I can recreate it, is figuring out what the current purpose of all the sentences are, because it makes it easier to see what needs to go, basically, or what needs to rearrange.
Sure.
So if we go on to the next one, that's when I start rearranging the stuff that's there. Okay. So we want to open the curiosity gap earlier. So essentially, I move that straight after the link, and then change some of the language to try and deepen the curiosity. So I think before it said something about, but this brining technique that I have has, whatever it said, has been good for my cooking. And in my deep dive about brining, I explain exactly how it works.
Yeah.
So the choice here is basically to remove the reference. Actually, maybe that's the next sentence.
So we're on something else now, are we?
Yeah, something else. So essentially, we're trying to just make the language more impactful. And again, something else, we're not being too specific with it. We're keeping it vague. We're keeping that curiosity gap wide. And again, something that's had an even bigger impact on my cook. So again, we're trying to get people excited about whatever it is that is going to come up if they watch the next video.
Okay, so you've injected something else and even bigger impacts for these reasons. Yes. Something else because there's curiosity around that. What is it? And even bigger impacts. Because it's even bigger than the amazing video they've just watched from that YouTuber in the first place.
Exactly. And then we got the pleasantries, I'm afraid to say.
Okay, all right. So you can just end the video and you don't need a nice sign off.
You can, but we're not done. There is another phase after this as well, just to basically make the promise more effective.
Okay, so let's just take stock what you've done so far then. So the first 4 sentences have stayed, although you've rewritten the curiosity gap. Wait a second, link curiosity. Okay, so before it was link promise call to action curiosity gap. Now it's link curiosity gap before the promise then call to action. So you've rearranged some things as well as removing the pleasantries. Interesting.
Yeah, essentially. The curiosity gap basically needs to come next, in my opinion, because we're figuring out, we're getting to the heart of why people would care, essentially. We need to hook them with that. We might want to make it clear that this next thing that I'm about to say is going to be something that you need to hear. And so again, that curiosity needs to be kept nice and wide early on, essentially.
Makes complete sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so link is you've rounded off the video with a link. I mentioned this beforehand, and then you've raised curiosity before making the promise. Yeah, makes complete sense. Great, that makes sense so far. Should we move on?
Sure. Okay. So the last step is essentially combining the call to action and the promise, because it feels a little more natural to speak in that way. So if you skip on to the next screenshot, I think. You can see that. So rather than saying, but in my deep dive on whatever the topic is, I'll show you what it is. So make sure to click that video to check it out. You're kind of repeating yourself if that's the case. So the last step really is just combining those two things. So what I started to talk about it just now. I got slightly lost as to where we were, but the reference to brining specifically originally kind of gives away what the technique is that you're going to need for the next one. So I consciously made that more vague.
So you've taken brining out of the link?
Or whatever it was, but I think the promise originally.
Okay. So let's double check, because just so people can follow. Go to the top. Okay, yes. And in my deep dive video about brining, I explained, but having that originally, the viewer knows that you're probably going to be talking about brining in the next video that you're sending them to. So you've taken it out of the promise in the finished product to increase that curiosity.
Exactly. And that allows you to then say, and as I have done in the combined call to action promise, not only will I show you how you can use this technique, but I'll show you what it is, because you don't know what it is at this point. So it's just, like you say, an additional kind of bit of curiosity for them. And then being super specific with the promise, essentially the transformation that you're going to receive by clicking it. So it's first of all making it relevant to what you've already spoken about, which in turn makes it seem like you're not going to lead them to another video. You're just continuing to talk about whatever the topic is you've been discussing.
Sure.
Then you widen that curiosity gap, getting them, keen to find out what it is you're going to talk about next. And then you hit them with, and this is what I promise you will receive, how you will be transformed if you then go ahead and click this video. And then you get out.
Amazing. And it's more concise, isn't it, than original? You've only got 3 sections. You've combined 2 sections into one, and you've removed one, so you've gone from 5 to 3 sentences there.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can see, in the kind of last tweet about this, I basically said the aim is setting up a point that links to the current video, widen the curiosity gap, and then promise a specific transformation they will get.
And that's the system. And if people follow this if they're not doing this already and they start implementing it in the end of their videos, they should see much higher amount of people clicking to watch their next video. That's the theory.
And I would love if anyone does try this, because I get people that DM me their kind of results from this. Feel free to tweet your end screen kind of percentages after trying this, because I'm so confident in it as a system at this point that I would just love to see that stuff working for other people as well.
Yeah, guys, definitely do that. Tag George at George Blackman _ once you're giving this a try, and let me know how it goes. I'm definitely going to implement this in my next few videos, because although I do put a call to action to the next video, because I know I want to get returning viewers watching my next video, exactly how I script out and structure that call to action section, I don't really give too much thought. So to have a system to follow like this, I'm really excited to try implementing this into my videos and see how it goes. It's really, really interesting, George.
Cool. And thank you. And the last, I suppose, thing is you've got to make sure the video you're picking is relevant. That's the last thing. It's got to be like, spend a minute just thinking, if somebody has watched the entirety of this video, what is it that they're going to really want to learn more about? Or what is it I can make them think they don't yet understand without watching this other one, right? Because a lot of the time your videos will have kind of crossover, and it's just finding what will cause the most curiosity and what will give the best transformation to the viewer if they click on.
Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. And at the end as well, you outline the benefits that we get from having people watch our videos for longer. Watching one of your videos for longer means you're going to get longer viewer session times. Our videos are more likely to show up in the suggested feed when a new viewer first lands on our content, and it deepens the connection with the audience. Love it. So useful.